Good morning, everyone. Welcome to my live Q&A. I'm just going to wait a couple of minutes here, get myself sorted with the questions, and let people join. I can't see comments on my phone, so I got to figure out how to do it on my computer here. I got my phone filming on the one hand, and then my computer on the other hand. Oops, that's not helpful. Oh, maybe I will see questions anyway. Okay. Hello, hello. Thanks for joining. I'm just waiting for people to show up because this one's a little bit different than my other ones. So I'm just letting people show up. We'll get started in just a minute. I want to make sure I can see everyone's. I've got my phone filming on the one hand, and then I'm going to have my computer up to see questions appearing. Good morning. Hi, Jacqueline. Glad you could come. I'm just looking and seeing if I can get... Okay, there we go. So I'll just wait a couple more minutes for people to come. Right now it's just you and I, Jacqueline, so we will see. If nobody else shows up, we can just have a chat. Oh, more people are coming. Good morning. Come on in. Oh, I can see my little one sneakily in the background there. She so desperately wants to be part of the video. All right, so I do have some questions. I can get started maybe on the ones that I've got here. One thing, if I don't know who was here this morning, but one thing, just before we get started into jumping into questions and things like that, I was thinking of having kids come on and sharing kind of their views and whether it's just about COVID or what parents can do to be helpful or not helpful, whether it's getting schoolwork done or all of those kinds of things. I think that could be really good. Sorry, I'm gonna get my children to leave screen, please. Leave frame.
Just leave it, Mark.
Thank you. Okay, and then we'll get started. Okay. Well, it looks like it's going to be a small group this morning, but I am going to videotape this so I can post it for people who can't watch. Feel free. I do have some questions already prepared, but as we go, just continue. If I haven't addressed your question or if you've got more as I'm talking, feel free. I should be able to see it pop up on my screen here. So the first question was, I'll just read it out. Many parents I know seem to be allowing their kids to have exposure to above their age books, movies, those types of things. Now that their, kids are teens, 13, saying they're teenagers and their friends are seeing this anyway, or that kids already know, vulgar words and seeing all of these things. Do you feel this may cause harm on their developing brains, in that kind of preteen to all the way into the teenage years? 12 to 15 specifically, and beyond. What are some ideas for parents to manage this media exposure when there are kids in others' homes if limits are different? I can spend a whole year talking about this topic, but I'm going to try to condense everything into a few key points just around the social media and exposure. There are a couple of things that I definitely saw in there. One is just around the whole, all my friends are doing it. Everybody else is doing it. I'll get to the social media piece, but we don't want to get caught up in that kind of thinking, right? And we definitely need to be careful on what we're modeling and what we're saying, okay. I know so many parents, good morning, thanks for joining. I know so many parents who do feel that pressure. Oh, well, if other parents are doing it, then I should be doing that as well. But we can't teach our kids just because everybody else is doing it. Because if we do it once, if we do it twice, if we do it anytime, our kids are going to learn, oh, well, if everybody else is doing it, I should too. So then what happens when you've got your teenage girl at a party and everybody's flashing? Well, everybody else is doing it, I should too, right? So it's through the decisions that we make as parents that are really influencing our kids. Well, see, mom and dad thought, well, if everybody else, then I may as well too. We don't want to teach those lessons. So that's kind of the first thing. Or if they're experimenting with drugs. I mean, there's so many things we want to make sure that we're getting into. So that's kind of the first thing when we're looking at the social media. The second now is, let's get into whether it's books or social media or screens. There is a reason why there's rating systems. And I am going to kind of focus on the screen piece specifically, but there are rating systems, and they were put in there to protect kids. That's why they were designed. And yes, there's absolutely negative effects on the teens. It's kind of sad though, when we look at the research, even if there are rating scales, the most violent shows are usually children's shows. So it's a different kind of violence. But if you think about, even when I was a kid, Bugs Bunny, right? And what was his name? The road racer bird. And the coyote Wiley, I think his name was, right? He was always dying, or things, even little things. It starts like that. But now, I mean, if you watch these other cartoons, there's a lot of violence that our kids are exposed to. But anyways, all of it does have effects on our brains. So we know that social media, when there's more screen time and when there's more social media and exposure to these types of things, it is linked to aggressive behavior, antisocial behavior, drug use, sexual activity, obesity. Our teens are having more and more body images. Roadrunner, that's it. Thank you. The poor school performance, anxiety, mood, all of these things are happening. Now, kids, and I'm going to focus a little bit on teens here. The teenage brain is going through so many changes right now. It is at its most powerful. So this is a fantastic time for our kids, our teens, to be learning a new language or a new instrument or all of those types of things. Another question came in. Yeah, okay, about routines. I will be getting to that as well. It affects everything that they're taking in is affecting their perception of the world, and it's affecting their behaviors. Okay. And so they are very vulnerable as well. Even though it's at its most powerful, it's at its most vulnerable in terms of mood and anxiety. And a lot of that is influenced what they're taking in, right? There's lots of problems for younger kids, but with teens, I'm definitely worried because, one of the things I talk about a lot is their identity formation. Teens are in this time, trying to form their identities, and it's really their identities wrapped up in their self-esteem and their self-concept of who they are. And social media has completely distorted this process. There's unattainable ideas of beauty or friendships or lives, and it all leads to this depression and anxiety. I went to the pet store a couple of months ago, and there's kittens and there's the different animals you could see, and these two teenage girls, I don't even think they were that old, maybe 13, 14, and they're pressing their boobs together and trying to take selfies and for over an hour trying to get that perfect picture, right? And with social media, that's what they're trying to do. But then other people are seeing these perfect pictures and they think that's what I need to, I need to have my bestie, and I need to look beautiful, and I need to be glamorous all the time. And it's really distorting their sense of selves and this whole identity process. And earlier today I talked about, alienating our kids, and this is part of what's happening. Seeing these images on screens as well, it releases stress hormones into our body. So when we're seeing nudity, huge adrenaline rushes come into our brain. And, I'm not even going to get into the damage of pornography, what that has on our teens, but it's causing a lot of problems in real world relationships, what real relationships look like. It's really affecting our self-image. Seeing sexual content, it's creating distorted thoughts about love and disrespect or respect of others, right? Sex has sort of become this commodity. I just want more and more and more and more and more, but we've completely lost that connection with another person. This is a relational thing between someone very special to me. That's completely lost, and the need to invest in a relationship and caring for the other person. Sex just become this commodity. Violence is often glamorized, right? And kids are getting desensitized to both violence and sex. And then when they come into real, sexual relationships, it's never enough. It's never the same because it's not as exciting as what it was on TV, right? The stress hormones that are going through the body, it's affecting their sleep, it's affecting their ability to learn, it's affecting all sorts of development. And like I I said, the teenage brain is going through so much change right now. Yes, there's a lot of growth, but there's also a lot of pruning happening. And so it's a use it or lose it. And if our teens are spending all of their time on screens, and this is my biggest problem, number one problem with screens, is screens are taking away other opportunities. So other opportunities, I mean, when I was a teenager, I was outside playing, capture the flag, or doing different activities. We're playing Risk, we're interacting face to face. And screens rob our kids from reading a real book or knowing how to be bored, right? Filling their time, doing things creatively. So when we look at the teenage brain, if they are spending all their time gaming or even just doing their homework on screens, that is robbing them of other important experiences in life, and that will change their brain because they are going to lose those connections in the brain if they're not using them in other areas. And it's irreversible changes that happen. So yes, absolutely. I mean, I can go on and on and on about the screen thing. Just getting outside, exercise, all of those things that we're missing. We also talk a lot about, more and more self-regulation, emotion regulation, building resilience, all of these types of things. That was never a thing. And when I was a kid, and not just because people didn't know about it, we didn't need to know about it back then, because just through the experience of life, we learned to self-regulate. We learned to regulate our emotions. We learned to be resilient. I mean, when I have a teenager now, man, she has never been on the public transit by herself. When I was her age, I was, taking the train downtown, watching a movie, coming back at like midnight. Our kids just don't have these same experiences for resilience. And so that's why now we are trying to create resilience, but it's through these experiences that they're missing out on, which I blame a lot on screens. And I'm really worried about screens just around COVID too. So I think it's a timely topic just because our kids are on screens. I am someone who has a zero tolerance for screens in my home. I mean, so obviously it's a big deal for me. But my kids are on the screens all the time now, are on their computers, with the Google Classrooms and everything else that they're doing. So, I do worry because screens are really addicting. 20 years ago, they had projected that the amount teens were using, this was 20 years ago, the amount teens were on screens, they were spending, even just TV, spending about 10 years of their life by the time, they age out, 10 years of their life would be watching TV. And now it's even worse. So for me, the content is very problematic. There are reasons why there's restrictions, but then even just the use of, social media and screens. So what do we do? That's the thing, right? It's easy to talk about. We do need to establish, part of our values as parents, and I've talked about our values and our roles as parents, is to create boundaries. Our kids need boundaries, and they're always going to be pushing those boundaries. But we have to be firm, because they'll push and push and push, and when they realize, oh, that's where the boundary is, then they feel safe and secure. So for attachment and relationship, that's really important. In the heat of the moment, it's always hard. So you have to have your red lines. I have my red lines. A red line for me is you can watch TV only if you're with someone. So my children have never watched TV alone, because that can get into really tricky downward spiral sort of territory. So that's a rule that we have in our house that I established at a young age. Now, if you're trying to play catch up and you didn't have rules, it's much easier when you establish it and it's just always been. We need to collaborate. I mean, it's democratic parenting. We are collaborating with our kids, getting their input, sharing our concerns, but also getting their side of their story, acknowledging how they feel, and acknowledging that disappointment. Well, my friends got to watch that movie. Why can't I? Right? So it would be really interesting to ask them what they think your concerns are, because I bet they know what your concerns are. But having this discussion and what can we do to kind of meet in the middle? And so, my daughter, I've asked her, what kind of shows are your friends watching? And so we watch them together, right? And some of them are like Brooklyn Nine-Nine and Friends, which I watched in university. There's these types of shows. So there are things that can bring up really good opportunities to talk. Like I would never let my girls at this age watch 13 Reasons Why. I watched it, I previewed it myself just to see, and I think they're just not ready to go there. We have watched a little bit of Glee, and there's definitely some content in there that it's like, oh, okay, but it's great opportunities. We've had some great discussions. So co-viewing is a great way to be able to watch some of these things and have those discussions. Now, if we have our values and we stick firm with those at home, I mean, we hope that our kids will make good decisions later on. They might not. They still might, when they go to their friend's house, we don't have control over that, but we do have control what we can do at home as much as we can. So really it's just talking about your role, your boundaries, but let's work together. What sort of things can we do to kind of come find in the middle? So I think I wrote a couple of notes. I just want to make sure there's nothing else that I missed here. Hopefully that helps. Let me know if there's more questions out of that. I'm happy to keep going on about that, so you can put them in. Another question that I had was just around reinforcing the need to follow medical advice. So I'm assuming around COVID and social distancing, when when your kids' friends and families aren't necessarily following those rules. Actually, I'm going to put some links in here, so make sure you check later. I didn't get a chance to yet, but I will later on, to whether it's different reading resources. I do have some on screens. I actually did a global news spot on this very thing. How can we keep our kids social distancing, especially when everybody's doing it? So this goes back to, well, all my friends are, right? Well, that's great for your friends, but this is our values as a family. I think it's really important. Kids are actually educated about COVID. And this is the thing. We make rules as parents, but we don't necessarily fully explain them. So whether it's the social media or COVID, we want to really explain what's going on. And for them not to be like, yeah, but to really understand. So I'm going to give you guys a link to a COVID simulator where you can actually see how exponentially fast COVID can spread. And if kids can visually see, that's why we're isolating, because if we just stand still and isolate, it doesn't spread nearly as fast, right? And it's kind of devastating when you see people, the simulator, everybody's still mixing and mingling, and everybody essentially just keeps getting reinfected and it never goes away. So sometimes having those graphics can be really helpful. This is where the red line comes in. I talk a lot about red lines where it's an absolute rule. When it comes to health and safety, it's an absolute rule. So that's great that they're doing that, but look at the risk that it's causing. So as a family, but what can we do to help make it better, right? I think it's important too. I don't know, the mom who shared this question, I don't know where you live, but in Calgary, Calgary can't open up as quickly as the rest of the province because Calgary is in a pretty bad spot. So we can talk about these types of things too, where we're not able to open up because COVID's still pretty high. We haven't, we're not flattening the curve out. And if we start prematurely going out too quick, we're just going to make it worse, and we don't want to contribute to those types of things. So what can we do? And again, it's coming back to that collaborative problem solving, and I'm going to be going into that in the next few days and giving you even scripts and outlines of how to do that, where we're working together to find a solution that we're all happy with. And so it is getting creative. It's having, I know teenagers who've had parties, face-to-face parties, and they're drinking games and all of that. There's Battleship. My girls love playing Battleship with their friends. So it's just finding ways that we can connect. I think a lot of our teens have a hard time, well, just kids in general, with the whole FaceTiming, because they're not used to face and looking at each other and talking. And it can be really, I've worked with lots of kiddos virtually, and they have a hard time just sitting and watching me. They're all over the place. And as they get older, we're just texting all the time, and we don't have those face-to-face interactions. So it's good practice that way. So there's no hard and fast rule. It's just collaborating with your kids, saying, this is the rule. I know it sucks. Acknowledge their feelings, but that's kind of where you go with the whole COVID thing. One of the other questions, actually, Lindsay's brought up here, without correcting the kids, how do we get them to complete their routines? Can we remind them? Can we ask them to do things? Oh, I think that's going back to my challenge about not giving them corrective feedback. You can, and you will. For right now, though, it's not, because the focus is just on building your relationship. And so it's so hard. I did that for a week. The first time I did it for a week, the first 2 days, I was so angry. And like, I even punched something the very first day because I'm just like, why can't they just pick up their stuff, right? But the goal here, I know some parents are having a hard time because they're like, well, I'm their maid and I'm following up after them. But it's just to build a relationship. Once, you've tried it for as long as you can and you start to see some change, if it's too hard all day, then maybe it's just an hour a day, those types of things, just leaving that space where it's nag free. You will find then you can start throwing in those reminders, or let's work together. This week I wanted to be nag free and see what happens. And I noticed it was really hard. Everybody needed my reminders. The only problem is when we remind our kids, we are creating dependency because they won't think for themselves to pick it up on their own. Right? Because they always will need us to remind them, oh yeah, I'll go get my shoes. Right? And so it's finding another way. So for right now, it's kind of an experiment to build your relationship, but also to see what happens when you don't give them that feedback and those reminders. Then you can come back together. And like I said, I'll give you scripts for this collaborative problem solving over the next week, where you can come together and say, okay, guys, I get really frustrated because I've been trying hard to keep a clean house. What can we do to work together and try different systems that will work for your kids? At my home, it's essentially, cool, if you I don't want to get into the power struggle and I don't want to nag you guys. So feel free to leave your stuff around. I've got a big bin that I've got on the stairs. And so if I'm tidying up and they've left something, I'll throw it in the bin. Then comes Sunday, and then it's their job to take it up to their room or to put it away. And then every Sunday, I empty the bin. And there was once where my younger daughter, it was her birthday. I picked up all of her birthday presents and threw it into the bin, and she never put it away. She had a week. It was her responsibility. She didn't put it away, and I gave it away. I took it away and gave it to Goodwill. And guess what? They learn fast, right? They learn really, really fast that kind of sucks. I mean, it was all kind of cheapy stuff anyways. It wasn't anything, the stuff that was really important to her she took, but it was still devastating for her. But I've never had to worry about it again. You can also establish times. We have a clean 30 at our house. So you can set a time. So 4 to 4:30, for example. Okay, everybody clean 30. And so we just look around and see what we can pick up. So first it's picking up our own stuff if it's laying around on the counter or on the floors. And then it's just what else can we help out with? So we're all together in that 30 minutes, just tidying up as much as we can. So it's kind of doing those types of things. And I will get to other, routines and stuff like that. But for now, that was the point of that exercise. Let me know if you had more questions around that. Another question I had is, if speaking respectfully is one of your top family values, what are some positive ways to deal with disrespectful attitudes or talking back? Oh, thanks, Carrie. Yeah, the clean 30. It's a great one because then we're all doing it together. That's the worst part of chores. Sorry, I'll come back to the disrespect. That's the worst part of chores. I mean, just the word chores sucks, right? It's time to do chores. Ugh. So if we've got clean 30 and we've got, okay, everybody, this positive experience and we're all doing it together, that just helps, make things a little bit easier. So going to the disrespect, I'm going to be talking a lot about this in the coming days and weeks. We're in the second part of the challenge now, where it's all about connection, and connection is a key part of respect. So again, I talk a lot about the teenage brain. I keep going there, but even our tweens, right, are kind of going to this. The brain is changing so quickly. It's just as quickly as a baby's. And we know when babies, those first 2 years of life, there's so much growing happening, and it's happening again in the teenage brain. I'm assuming you're talking about your teenage kids, but even with our younger ones. So you just need to deal. It's like a temper tantrum. Again, we're going through another terrible 2 phase here with our teenagers, from the time they're 12 all the way up, to whenever their executive function starts to develop, which, by the way, in typically developing boys is 30s or 40s. With girls, it's kind of early 20s. Then if you've got a diagnosis like ADHD, it's even more delayed. So we've got, some time to have to manage this. But it's really like we're dealing with our toddlers all over again, just in bigger bodies, which is really frustrating, right? And so these are one of those expectation things that we need to know about our kids. So we can expect as they get closer to teenage years, there is more irritability and snappiness disrespect. I mean, it's a normal part, it's a sucky part, but a normal part of teen growth. And it goes hand in hand with all of those mood changes and roller coasters that we see. Teens, they start to think differently. They're thinking in new and more abstract ways that they've never thought before, and they're feeling emotions they've never felt before. So there's a lot of that turmoil going on, and they need to test out their ideas, which is really important for development as well. So there's going to be a lot of headbutting. And again, I'm going to be talking about this, but we sort of want to have talk backers. Right? It's a good sign, because that means your kids are likely to stand up for themselves. If they were just yes men, respectful all the time, and what happens with peer pressure? Yeah, yes, I'm just going to follow along. And if you think of the greatest revolutionaries, they are the ones who stood up to authority. If no one ever stood up to authority, where would our world be? We would still probably be under, the Catholic Church back in, medieval times, because no one ever dissented. We'd probably still think that the world was flat, right? It's kind of that big brother thing. So we definitely want these talk backers. So it's something to think about. It's a part of development. Like I said, it's a sucky part, but it is part of development. But there's definitely things. It's not for us to put up with it. I don't want you guys to think of everything that I talk about, whether it's not giving your kids corrective feedback or anything like that. I'm not a hippie 60s parent. And that's where a lot of this, we gotta, it's protect our kids and not say anything bad. That came out of the 60s parenting, which was actually pretty problematic. But I'm not saying that. I don't want you to feel like you're a doormat and that you need to be talked to poorly or that you need to be the maid for your kids. Right now, it's about developing that relationship. But there's things that we can be doing. In the heat of the moment is never helpful. So if your child is talking rudely to you, in that moment is not the time to address it. You don't have to sit and take it, but you don't have to address it there. It's just going to cause a fight. Telling them off or saying you need to be respectful, you're just going to get eye rolls or a little bit more attitude, right? So that's just not helpful. And that's why that corrective feedback is one of the things that I give parents, just to learn to walk away in the moment. We want to be able to communicate when everyone is calm. Right? That's really important. And that's what I'm going to be talking about over the next few days when we're getting into the effective communication and collaboration. So it's going through that process that will help you establish expectations and rules. Kids know that they're not supposed to be disrespectful, but in the moment, it's really hard. Their emotional brain sort of takes over. My kids just know I don't take disrespect. I don't punish or call it out, and especially in the moment, I don't do anything. My kids just know I'm going to ignore them and I'm going to disengage if they talk rudely. So that's setting up your expectations. I don't need to sit here and take this. So I disengage because I know any engagement, it's just going to, cat fight, right? It's just going to make it. And for some kids, like I've got kids with ADHD. And so if we're engaging in the fight with them, it's stimulating their brain. A lot of times kids, whether they have ADHD or not, especially as they go into teenage years, they are reward seeking. And even if it's a fight, that's rewarding the brain with dopamine. So I don't want to reinforce fighting. Right? And that's essentially what we do. And it sounds kind of counterintuitive, but that's kind of what we're doing. We're reinforcing those behaviors because it's stimulating the brain. There's excitement going on in the brain, right? So we don't want to do that. And sometimes kids don't even realize that they're being rude. So getting mad at them only makes things worse because then they're getting defensive. But when I disengage, my kids right away know that they were being jerks and they'll apologize. So if we're engaging in them, then we become the mean ones. We become the ones who are being rude. We are the ones who are becoming disrespectful. But if we disengage, and, the other day, I can't remember what exactly happened, but my little one was being pretty sassy and I was hurt. Like I was genuinely hurt. And I showed my hurt. Normally we show our anger and that just gets their backs up. But I showed my hurt. And right away she came to me and, oh, mommy, right? And she wrote me a note, a lovely note. I'm so sorry. I love you. Come, when you're ready. I know right now you're probably upset, but when you're ready, you come to me. Like, that's amazing. That was my 9-year-old who was doing that, right? So they do have that capacity, but it's just in how we're responding in that moment. if you show sadness, if you're sad and you start crying, that's okay. And they can see that direct consequence. Otherwise, if we're just getting angry, it's just going to cause problems. So again, it always comes back to the relationship, which is why I'm focusing on the relationship first. And if you have a solid day, one after another, I've got a good relationship with my girls and I still get disrespect, but right away we are repairing those things. And sometimes I'm a jerk to them too, right? I get stressed and I'm a jerk, and I show how I fix it. You know what? I was really rude. I'm sorry. So they're going to make mistakes and they are going to be disrespectful, but it's teaching them how they can go and fix and repair those relationships, and that's through our relationship in the first place. So you know, we have to give a little bit and really understand their perspective. There's usually a reason why, and I'm going into in part 3 a lot around the behavior piece. So you know, with that relationship, I focus on it because the respect and the cooperation comes. Again, no specific hard and fast easy answer, but hopefully that's helpful in the moment of any behavior, whether it's rudeness or major temper tantrums or anything. We're disengaging from that moment. And again, it's just coming back later when we're calm, right? That's when we're going to talk about it, and not in a blamey way, because they're just going to become rude again and their back's up. It's just coming back and saying, hey, I got, you know, I was really upset the way we ended our interaction, you know, and that's how you kind of would bring it up. There have been, I'm just looking at some other questions here. Okay, good. I hope that's helpful. One was, where did it go? Just around, sorry guys, routines and things like that. Okay, here it is. So I've got lots of questions just about finding balance, right? Working moms, some of them are single moms, but you know, working full-time moms, balancing that with teaching our kids. First of all, I gotta say, we are not trained educators. If you are a teacher, well, you know, kudos to you. You're probably still having a hard time too, but maybe you're ahead of us in terms of knowing how to teach. But we're not trained educators. That's not our job, right? So we need to give ourselves a break. I find moms are so hard on themselves anyways. I always, you know, what I always say is, here's your baby and 5 pounds of guilt compounded daily for the rest of your life, right? We're always feeling guilty about everything. And this is another place where we can just beat ourselves up with guilt. We just need to give ourselves a break. We're not teachers. We're doing our best, right? So for me, you know, I'm lucky because my kids are a little bit older. I know some of the moms who are asking this, they've got younger kids who maybe don't know how to read or write by themselves yet. So I'm a little bit luckier that my kids both know how to read and write. So for me, it's not about their, you know, getting their curriculum done. My teenager, I mean, she does. She's got classes every day. She still has her math and her science and her humanities every day with her teacher, and there's still expectations there. But with my younger one, you know, there's not a lot going on, and she's pretty bored. She was always bored with school. So for me, I want to use this time to instill the love for learning. Right. I loved school when I was a kid. Both my girls hate school. They're actually loving COVID right now. But I want them to love learning. And so every day, or, you know, they're working on some research project. At the beginning of COVID, was just talking, you know, casually about how women have different depth perception than men. And so that's why if you're driving along with your husband, or if a man's driving, you're like, right, and you're clutching on for dear life because you think that they're going too fast or they're going to hit the person. And part of it is we have different depth perception than men. And so my oldest one's like, that is fascinating. I want to go research it. So she researched all about, and she was learning about the eyes. And actually she found out, I didn't know this, men really do have tunnel vision. I didn't know that, but you know, and so she was bringing up all of this stuff. My daughter wanted to learn about nutrition. And so she learned about the, you know, Canada's food guide and how we should be eating. And what else have they learned? Screens, media on brain development. My little one did a whole PowerPoint presentation on that. So no, they're not doing, you know, the curriculum that's assigned to them, but they're going out there and they're researching and they're putting together projects. Now, for your kids who maybe can't read and write, there's videos. There is a video for pretty much anything, right? And so maybe there's that one guy who's like a millionaire now because him and his son would cut cut things open, cut things in half and see what's in the middle of it, right? So kids could watch that video and see what's in the middle of a basketball, what's in the middle of a VCR, I don't know, right? So they can just go and start watching videos. One of the moms was saying her little girl has ADHD and she's having a really hard time sitting and watching, the videos with their classmates. So maybe it's getting wireless headsets, right? So that she can still at least participate and listen. So those are the things. One of the things I often do with kids if there's attention difficulties, and this kind of goes in with another mom's question just around, helping them build their focus. Giving them an expectation of how long they can focus. And I love pairing something. So whether it's a watch or a cool bracelet or a badge, something that they can wear. And the rule is whenever they are wearing this really cool thing and we want it motivating and engaging for them, their job is to sit and focus. And focusing means eyes on teacher, listening, or doing their work. You got to explain what that focus looks like. And you want to pair it. So you want them to be successful. If they can only sit for 45 seconds before they're starting to look around or getting up, you want to make it easy. You want to stop at 20 seconds. You're going to put your badge on or whatever it is. 20 seconds, you're focusing on, and give them a fairly easy task. And then reward. Dude, we set it for 20 seconds and you got it. Badge off, go run around, right? Now we're going to try to beat that time. Last time you did 20 seconds, and maybe it's not 20 seconds. Maybe they can sit 5 minutes. You want to do 2.5 minutes, right? So that they can be successful, so that they can experience, hey, I can sit and focus. Because oftentimes, and this is part of the reason why I give corrective feedback, especially kids with ADHD, they get 20,000 more pieces of corrective feedback than other kids in a year, just 1 year. They're always, kiddo, do this, kiddo, do that, sit down, I go into a classroom and I'm watching a kiddo with ADHD and every 2 seconds I'm hearing that kid's name. So they're not ever experiencing success. And so we just want them to have that success and feel that success, right? And so if they're having a hard time sitting and focusing, right, just giving them that badge saying we're going to sit 20 seconds or however long it is, and then we're going to reward them being successful. So that's kind of one piece. The key with kids, whether they have ADHD or not, is getting them interested, because what happens is the amygdala in our brain, which is our animal brain, it controls this front part of our brain. So like I said, with ADHD in boys, you're looking at 40s, at least. Girls, we're probably thinking about 30s if there's attention difficulties there. So the amygdala will shut this part of our brain down, so being able to focus and our motivation and all of those sorts of things, as soon as a task is boring, as soon as we think it's going to take too long, as soon as we think, I'd rather be doing this instead of that. So we want to make sure the task is as engaging as possible for them. So, those are types of things that we need to look at. How can we make this fun? Sometimes I do a scale, how sucky is this? How boring is this task? And kids are like 10, it's awful, right? So, okay, what can we do to make it a little less boring, right? And then it's just how we're setting it up. Okay, well, maybe we can do different colored pencils. Okay, cool, let's do that. You try it, and then we'll check how sucky it actually was afterwards. So setting it up like an experiment, sometimes that can get kids engaged. It's just little things like that we're doing. Again, researching topics of interest, maybe doing different technology. So for the younger kids who maybe don't know how to read and write yet, maybe we're introducing them to things like Google Read and Write, and they have to write their own story, right? And they're dictating it. So getting them into technology that way can be really helpful. Making sure, they're exercising. So before there's any hard work, getting them to Go Noodle. Is it Go Noodle?
It's Go Noodle.
Yeah, Go Noodle. It's a fun little dance. So it's almost like Just Dance video game, but they can go and listen to music and do some dancing. Heavy lifting, they can do, chair push-ups, so tricep dips or things like that, doing a little bit of exercise before something hard. You definitely do not want them doing something fun. Like if they're doing their favorite Lego building, and now you're saying, okay, it's time to come do work, that's going to suck for them. You don't want to transition from a preferred activity to a hard activity either. So we got to look at the whole context around what we're doing with our work. Sometimes I love doing workstations. So one thing that you could do, and I'll send this, actually, I'll make a note to myself to send this. I'll send you guys reading lists and schedules and articles, everything that can be helpful for you. But essentially a workstation is if you have, your child's desk, at the top of the desk going down on the left-hand side, that might be your right, but on the left-hand side, having baskets. So, and 3 baskets, and in each basket is a different activity. So maybe a coloring activity, imitating letter design activity, and then a math activity. Super simple. We want to start easy, simple. It's only going to take them a couple of minutes each. So what they do is they take the first basket from the top, they bring it down in front of them, they finish it, and then over to the right is the finished bin, and it goes into the finished bin. Awesome, did it. Now I'm gonna get my second activity, put it in the middle. When I do that, I'm gonna put it over into the bin. So the kids see there's only 3 things I need to do, and then I get the success of putting it into the bin, right? And so if we can set up their environment so there's no distractions around them and they know exactly what they need to go to, right? And it might only take them a few minutes, but that gives you a few extra minutes to do your work, still being there around them. That can be really helpful because I know exactly what I need to do next, and I'm seeing it being done, and I'm feeling motivated and proud, because oftentimes we'll give them a worksheet and they're like, oh my gosh, it's going to take me forever, or how much do I have to do? But now they can see it's not that bad. Another thing you can do is write on Post-it notes. I kind of like the idea of a bingo, right? So write on Post-it notes everything that they need to do, and maybe color code it. So pink is reading, blue is math, green is science, right? And so everything that they have, you write what they need to do, or draw a little picture, or however it's going to make sense for your kids, and they get to pick and choose. As long as they pick one color, so one activity from each column, then that's okay. So it doesn't have to be everything, but that one thing from each column. And then they've got their stickies that they can move along and look at all the stickies that I've done, right? And then you can keep changing those up. So there's lots of different things. And I'm happy to chat. If you're struggling with something specific, I'm happy to chat to kind of individualize it. I'm just giving you all of my ideas right now. Minimizing distractions, so if they're trying to do their work, but their Xbox is right there within their sight, or their Lego is within their sight, that's going to be really hard. So you want to make sure there's all these distractions away. I call them time robbers. And that way we don't have to nag our kids about what they're doing. Like, why weren't you doing this? We can start blaming an external entity. What were your time robbers? Oh, well, the Xbox, or oh, my Lego, or whatever it is that's getting in their way. Okay, what can we do so that they're not robbing your time? Right? So that they're not getting you into trouble, right? It's about self-preservation. So sometimes it's using language like that. And how can I support you so these time robbers don't get in the way? Because I don't, these time robbers are causing us to fight, right? Or whatever it is. So that can be really helpful. Sometimes adjusting your schedule. I mean, I normally wake up at the crack of dawn just so I can work out. I'm not working out then anymore. I'm working out later on in the day, and my kids can join me in the workout. But I'm using that earlier morning to get some work done, and then later on at night once they're in bed to get some work done. So maybe we have to readjust our schedules a little bit, getting the hardest stuff, maybe clearing our mornings so we can help our kids get the hardest stuff done first. And then we have some more flexibility in the afternoon. The other thing is, we put so much pressure on ourselves as parents, but it really does take a village to raise kids. And it is tricky now because of COVID, but maybe it's looking at what alternatives are there. I know there's some grandparents who are doing little mini lessons through the day. So they're FaceTiming their grandkids, and they are picking up, maybe I'm going to read a story to you, or we're going to do this activity together. But you may be having other parents, right? So you're doing little mini homeschool sessions, and there's a few kids, and they're all coming on together, and doing some FaceTime learning and engagement. I was doing for a little while where it was open to all kids who wanted to come, little show and tell sessions every day. So they would do whatever work they were doing or activities, and they were actually getting excited. Oh, I'm excited to do this science experiment or this craft or whatever, because I want to show it to the group at the end of the day. So if you can start those types of things, it can be helpful. And I even had teenagers join those types of things. It looked a little bit different. You don't want to mix the teenagers with the little kids. So I did end up losing my teenagers. When they were all together, it was awesome because they were sharing, but you want to look at those groups. I do have some articles that I put together for reading lists, just in terms of scheduling. There's some great examples of schedules, different activity ideas. So I'll put that after this Q&A, I'll put that all in there. So that was the finding balance. I just want to see, I think there was one more question around emotion regulation. And I kind of talked about the self-focus. They still need our help. The emotion regulation with anything, our kids, they know they're supposed to keep their cool. They know that they're supposed to keep their hands to themselves. They know that they're not supposed to scream. Every rule that they break, they probably know the rules. But kids, whether or not they have ADHD, I know a lot of moms, have kids with ADHD that were asking me questions. Whether or not they do, our emotional brain is stronger than our cognitive brain. And our emotional brain takes over almost every time. And even for us, we know when we get frustrated, we might yell. We don't want to be yelling parents, but we still might yell anyways when we get so frustrated. And for kids, their emotional brain is way stronger anyways. So we need to give them a break in that heat of the moment. So I'm always going back to the heat of the moment. There's not anything that we can do. Lecturing, nagging, scolding, punishing in that moment is not going to be helpful. It's about creating that space. Then it's coming back and saying, hey, bud, I noticed you're really frustrated, right? What can we do? A lot of the work has to come proactively. So the whole reason why I said that is reactively, there's not much we can do. We know the emotional brain is going to take over. So it's, proactively maybe creating a calming space. But if we're going to create a calming space, it's not, Kate, we've got our space, and then whenever I see you getting upset, I'm going to shun you away to your space, because that becomes a punishment. That becomes a timeout. But if we're going to do it proactively, we are setting up this creative, this space, this calming space. We're going to get some activities, and we're going to spend some time in here together, just doing some quiet activities. We want to pair that calming space with calmness, with happiness, with good times. Once you've done that pre-work, then when they start to get a little bit frustrated, hey, let's go to your calming space, and I'm going to come with you, or you can go on your own, right? And so we want to make sure that space is proactively set up to be that place. We can also do what's called teaching interactions. And this is really important. Like I said, all kids know what they are supposed to do or not supposed to do. It's just in the heat of the moment, it's hard. But I always give the example of swimming. I can talk to a child for 10,000 hours about how to swim. But I would never then expect that child to go and jump in the deep end of the pool if they have never swam before. And yet we're always telling our kids, don't hit your brother, don't do this, don't do that. But we've never given the opportunity to practice. With swimming, they actually have to go out they have their life jackets at first. Maybe they're in the shallow end first, right? And then they go a little bit deeper and deeper. And it's the same thing, whether we're doing emotion regulation or behavior management, we are their life jackets at first. We need to be there to support them. And that's only going to come through practice. And so it's actually kind of funny. Normally, sibling rivalry is a thing, and I will be talking about that in the challenge as well. Siblings are jerks, to each other sometimes. So I'll have a kid who's doing like their Lego and they spend hours, and then their little brother comes and kicks it over. So I actually set up opportunities. And it's really funny in my office because I'll tell the brother, okay, you're going to go and break your brother's Lego on purpose. And then they're like, oh my gosh, that's so mean. Why would I do that? Yet they're doing it every day. That's why I'm kind of chuckling. But it's setting your kids up. Okay, bud, I'm going to cheat. We are going to play this game and I'm going to cheat. You are going to lose. I'm going to win, right? Or you are going to build this little Lego and your brother's going to come kick it over. These are the practice sessions. We tell them why we're going to work on it. We're going to make, our human thinking brain stronger than our animal brain. That's our emotional brain, our amygdala. I teach them about the brain. We are going to work on strengthening this brain, right? And this is your job. And we want to make sure that they have buy-in. So the buy-in might be, you know what? And then we're going to play a really fun game after, if you can keep your cool, right? So it's setting them up with practice sessions. Okay, so what's your job? Your brother's going to come kick this over, and don't do like their big Harry Potter castle, right? You're going to start with something small and easy, and then you're going to build up. So your job, okay, you can say, that sucks. I like having a mantra, some go-to phrase that can be used anywhere. Man, that sucks, or I'm disappointed, or I'm frustrated. Because right now they probably scream and hit, right? So we want to do something else with their mouth and something else with their hands. So whether it's clasping their hands together, I'm frustrated, right? And then I can go ask for help. I can give my brother a different toy, going through, we're going to problem solve with them first while we're calm. What can you do? Here's your ideas. I'm going to write them out or take pictures of them on the paper so they're right there. I'm going to be here to support you. And then, okay, so we're going to set the timer. As soon as the timer goes off, your brother's going to come and kick it over. Kick. What's your job? Oh, I'm so frustrated. Okay, cool. And then we reinforce them. So now they've had success doing the very things that we've always expected them to do and that they know to do. They just haven't been able to do on their own. Then we're going to increase the expectations. Okay, sometimes in the next 5 minutes, he's going to come kick something over, or sometime in, this afternoon, your brother's going to do something. I don't know what, right? Because it's inevitable. Something's going to happen. And so we can start building up those sort of pieces. I'm also going to talk about pro-social behaviors, and this really helps with the emotion regulation piece. Sorry, am I talking about Lego? My kids are starting to play Lego right next to me. Pro-social behaviors. I'm going to talk a little bit about this later on in our parenting challenge. Kids tend to persevere, and they tend to keep their cool, and they tend to cooperate when they have 3 key positive emotions built up. One is pride. And a lot of our kids, especially those with ADHD, don't necessarily have a lot of pride in areas that are most problematic, right? If they're super athletic, I've got one little guy, he's a martial artist, and he does fantastic. He goes to his dojo or whatever it's called, and he listens and he follows through because he's feeling pride. He's feeling confidence in himself. So pride, we want to be able to capitalize on that. And that's why we want to create a lot of successes for them. The other one is gratitude and then compassion. And we build those up. And I will talk a lot about in our parenting challenge, ways to build those up. I think it's a lot for right now. But if you're going to remember anything, it's about, in the heat of the moment, not engaging. And it's about coming back later, working together. What can we do as a family, right? To avoid these blowouts or to practice or whatever else we can. I think, one other one is, how, just for our kids, how can we support our kids and not make them feel like their sibling is always getting the attention or their sibling is loved more. And I hear that all the time. You love Sally more than you love me. So I think, and again, this is where the connection piece comes through, especially if we've got kiddos who have extra behavioral problems or attention problems and they're getting a lot of that feedback. They're very sensitive to feedback, even more so than other kids. And it's hard because on the one hand, they kind of extinguish us. They kind of exhaust us sometimes. And it's like, it's not even worth, I'm trying to be nice and I'm trying to do all these things. And then you just treat me like a jerk. We get extinguished. Hey, kiddo, can you just stop for a sec? Thank you. We don't even want to spend time with them anymore. Or if they come back, even if they are saying sorry, and they're trying to fix things, it's like, okay, but I'm still angry. So the kids can make it really hard. So it's being, putting our big girl panties on and being the adult and allowing them to come back and forgive and trying to create those moments proactively where, you know, I'm thinking about you and I love spending time with you, and focusing on those sorts of moments away from sister, away from the other siblings can be really, really important. Kids tend to zoom in on whatever it is that they're focusing. You only love her, right? Or you're so mean. But if we zoom out, yes, right now I might be being mean because I'm yelling because of this situation. But if we zoom out, let's break it into parts, right? Hey kiddo, can you please stop? Okay, thank you. I don't know if you can hear, but it's my ADHD brain. I can't talk and listen. Thanks, kiddo. Now I've lost my train of thought. Breaking it into parts. So, you know, zooming out, okay, right now I'm being mean. So there's the mean part of mommy, right? But where's the fun part of mommy or the sad part of mommy? And we can start breaking it up that way. And so it can be the same thing within our relationship. You're saying that she's getting all of our attention. Okay, but let's look at, you know, when you're getting attention. Oh yeah, okay, so at bedtime you give me this, and right now you're giving me this, and we do have our break here, and we do have that. So it's just kind of backpedaling and visually showing them all of those things. If we just tell them in that moment, you don't love me, you love my sister more, and we're like, no, you know, I love you just as much. We have now negated their feelings, and we've just actually shown them, see, you do love her more. You're not listening to me. And so it's being able to acknowledge how they're feeling, right? And being able to take a step back and maybe even asking, what can I do? How will you know that I'm giving you as much attention to your sister? And sometimes, like, it's funny, you know, depending on their age, and even with some of the older kids, I've had one sister who felt like her brother was getting all of the attention. And so the mom was all concerned because, you know, sister was all sad and all of these sorts of things. And it had nothing to do with the attention so much as they weren't allowed to watch her favorite show anymore because brother, you know, would watch it and he would get violent. I can't remember what the show was, but it was age appropriate for her, just not the brother. But because he was seeing, you know, showing all of these behaviors, nobody was able to watch the show anymore. And so the sister was getting all upset and showing these behaviors and, you know, it's not fair. And so mom thought it was all about her relationship with the son versus the daughter, when really it was just the show. So that was an easy fix. So we need to talk to our kids about what's kind of going on for them. And sometimes it's an easy fix. That was a lot. I threw a lot at you. I know right now, you know, with the questions, it's kind of surfaced all of my ideas that I can give you for now. Feel free, though, if you have additional questions, whether it's follow-up questions based on what I've said, or you're really struggling with something specific, feel free to message me or leave a comment or whatever, and I can help you drill down if there's something specific. That's just kind of on the surface, you know, the general things that we can be doing. It's an hour, though, and I don't want to waste everyone's long weekend. I want you guys to go have fun with your kids and love them and collect them. And hopefully this was helpful. Thank you. Thank you all for coming, and go have an awesome weekend. And I will be back again tomorrow. I'm doing it every day for 30 days if you want, but you can always watch my videos later when it works for you. Take care, guys. Bye.